I'm Marc Roberson. So I haven't met a lot of you. I recognize some faces, but not everybody. Thanks for coming to Riverton. And we'll put this at the beginning of the video. Disclaimer, I really don't know much, so you'll get everything that I got. So there is handouts. It's right in there in the handouts you have. I didn't write that. I pulled it off a site that has some pretty good information on it. At some point, I'll highlight some of what they're saying in there a little deeper. And as we get into this, it looks like some of you might have already been involved in this ministry over the years, one place or another, or brought some experience to the table, which is good. The more experience, the better. One of the things I've learned, which I haven't been doing it that long, but I've learned is it's really hard to define what homeless ministry really is in a nutshell. And every individual, when you take the statistics out of it, you're really dealing with people. And every person is different and every story is different. So it's hard to get a big brush and paint everybody in one place and come up with an answer. But there are ways that we can be prepared, so. I think we're about ready. We good?
Mm-hmm. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so let's open with prayer. I've been praying a lot already. Thank you, Father, for tonight, for inspiring us and moving in our hearts to do something, not just to read about it or to hear about it or complain about it, but to be those who do. Not hearers of your words only, but doers. So give us wisdom, we pray tonight. Inspire and bring revelation to your heart in this matter, that we might follow you. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. So that's why we're here, right? To do good.
Yeah.
Morning, guys. Sit up front, move up front if you can, so you can be connected and involved. Just prayed and we're just getting started. How you doing, man? Good. I know you guys. So, Jesus said famously, the poor you shall always have with you. So, the challenge then is, what do we do about that? And how do we address it? Here comes some more. So let me wait for a second. We are in agreement. We want to do something good rather than bad. Right? Okay, so you guys, I got to bring you into Riverton ease. If you agree, you say amen, or you nod your heads, or something that shows that you are still you're not asleep, you're breathing. Thanks to Ronnie back there running the sound and tech. She's our techie tonight. She's going to click us through the things.
Good luck.
So I'm not going to teach you or share with you anything about what you're going to hear later. Some of the things you really need to know. You guys are here specifically because you're interested in volunteering to being on site when our population is here, right? When that folks are here, which is a huge responsibility. My limited experience is from being part of the steering committee and part of Watts in Winchester. Watts is not the first place to do it. We borrowed information and gleaned as much from everybody else around the state that was doing it. So, and every situation is different. So in Front Royal, ours is going to be different as well. But I know I'm speaking to the executive director, Marion Shuttlecord, who is at Watts right now, who I brought in and hired her to start that process, and she's taken it over. She's an awesome lady. And she agrees with me, she confers that the most important aspect of what we do is really held in the hands of the night managers, of the managers. In their case, they're all paid. Our first couple of years was volunteers, but in their case, it's paid staff managers. And they get the most training, they get the most exposure, they have the most consistency, and they really are the backbone, the stability of the whole ministry. And because they are there, that frees up all the rest of the churches and all the other good-hearted folks in town to come in and help and be a part of this and actually be the hands and feet of Christ and to do good, because the responsibility of being the person of authority in that place is off of their shoulders, and they're free to experience and takes the intimidation away. So the handful of folks, which looks like it's probably going to end up being you guys, that stands in that place, that's a lot of responsibility, but a lot of privilege and opportunity. So there's very specific rules about how you fill that role. And the first thing is this: we want to do good. So go ahead, Ronnie. First things I want to address, and just plant this idea in your head. This word and what it means to you right now is going to guide everything else you do in this whole ministry going forward. The expectations you bring to this ministry will inform all of your choices and your actions. So, expectations, one of my things I love to say is expectation breeds frustration. If your expectations are out of line or unrealistic, the result is frustration. And you can't go back and change it. So the easiest way to not get frustrated, not get taken advantage of, not get misused or abused, and not be caught off guard, and not end up in a place you didn't mean to be, is to adjust your expectations right up front. You may not completely agree with that, but that's just how I've been able to live through some things. And so step back and let's kind of spend the first few minutes setting some very realistic expectations of what this ministry is going to look like. Front Royal's homeless population is probably 10 to 15% the size of Winchester's, Frederick County. So they have a 35-bed maximum. We grew to that. There have been days in the past 4 or 5 years, 6 years, where we've had to turn people away at 35 beds. Not that many. Very few instances have we had to turn away for several reasons. But over the course of, I think in one season, I can remember as many as 60 different, maybe 64 different individuals who took advantage of our shelter. But on any one night, it was rare that we had to turn folks away. Very, very cold nights, very, very wet nights. They chose that. Many times, if there's an alternative, they'll choose it. Oh, it's a little bit warmer tonight. I've been there 4 nights in a row. I need a drink. I need my freedom. I need to be, or other reasons, health reasons. They're in and out of the hospital for other reasons, whatever. So I think if those statistics are anywhere near true, our shelter is probably going to be looking in the single digits, at least for this first year. I think I would be very surprised if we ever had more than 10. If we get started in 4 weeks and we got another 4 weeks of cold weather, I'd be surprised if we have more than 10. So, and on one side you think, well, I really hope there's a lot more. Well, that means, do you really hope there's a lot more? I don't know. So let's get that first expectation in there. Don't imagine that we're going to open the doors and there's just going to be this line out in the parking lot and they're all just going to be so grateful and thankful that there's a place to go and they're just going to be pouring in. And as a preacher, that's an expectation I have to set to myself every single Sunday. Work all week, get all excited, I'm fired up, and then, where is everybody? I'm just going to wait for them. So the expectation of numbers, let's get that settled right away. I think our population is lower. All of the conditions are magnified, so there'll be some, but let's not expect dozens. Let's not expect that. If we get it, let's prepare, but let's not get dashed expectations when they come. So that's one of them, I think. This is four that some of the folks talk about, 4 misconceptions that we're going to address. But there's a couple other expectations that I want to talk about too, so we can kind of establish right up front. Am I moving okay? One is the expectation of gratitude. Now, these are human beings and they have needs. That doesn't mean when you reach out your hand and say, here's a free sandwich, they're just going to kiss your hand and fall all over you and you're just so wonderful. The expectation of gratitude is one I think you really need to keep in your back pocket right from the beginning. There will be those stories that find themselves in Guidepost magazine and in the Sunday news. There will be those stories. There'll probably be just enough of those stories to keep you going through all the other stories that come about. There's always that one where you just go home and you're so discouraged after a week, but then this one person comes and says, "You've changed my life. I praise God for you and you're this church and your people," and it puts your feet back on solid ground and you endure. But that is not the norm. It's not the norm. So if you're doing this for a feel good, if you're doing this so that people like you, if you're doing this so that people shower you with appreciation or getting your name in the paper or having people send you, it's just not the reality of this ministry. It's not the reality of life, but it's not the reality of this ministry either. It doesn't mean they're not grateful. And it doesn't mean somewhere in their hearts they're so blessed. It just means you might not ever hear those words or feel appreciated. So kind of set your expectation low right there. If you're doing this to feel good or to be appreciated, that's going to be few and far between those things. Now, I hope I'm wrong, and I love it when I'm wrong. I remember that one time I was wrong, and it was the best thing. But so we're just talking about expectations. So let's set them down there. I'm not going to tell you why you're doing it, but the expectations of why you're doing this, go ahead and establish that and make that right in your heart now. Because expectation can breed frustration, and you don't want to get into this for all of this effort and then be frustrated right off the bat. Another expectation is that this is a problem that we're going to solve. That they've been coming 3 weeks, and I gave them my card, and I told them you can do this, and it's all better, and here they are. In fact, I was just talking to Marion up there in Watts, and this is their 9th year, I believe, or 10th year. I was there day one in the very first beginning, and there are guys in the population tonight that were there on the first day that I opened the doors then. And they will be there as long as Watts is going. They've had every year, every week, they're doing 20 weeks a year now in Winchester, where I was part of. They do 20 weeks a year, 20 weeks out of 52. And those guys, I run into them on the streets in July, and they're hanging around, can't wait for Watts to start up again, because that was the best part of the year. No intention of doing anything else. So the percentage of people that you're going to bring into this, turn them around, get them back on their feet, and get them back into society is in the 1 to 3%, 1 to 5% range, depending on how much effort we do. So are we going to try? We're going to try and pray and sweat and cry and do everything we can, because that's what's one of the reasons we're in this, right? We want to reestablish and give life and hope back to these folks. But if your expectation is it's going to work like 50% of the time, so just set the bar low. Then every success story has all of the wonder and glory surrounding it, which it deserves. The rest, there might be more that come out of that. I think I've just highlighted those 3 for now. You have any questions so far? I wasn't intending to do a big lecture all night. I thought we'd do some back and forth. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Mark.
Come on in, man.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are there any restrictions on who you would accept or any reason you would turn someone away?
Absolutely. But that would be rules and decisions that the leadership would have to establish right up front. And there are different types of shelters. The one, and I'm not sure the direction that we're going exactly here, but the one from Winchester, we deliberately is called a low barrier shelter, which means you're not checking IDs when they come in. We're not checking immigration status. We're not checking even if there's a warrant out for them. We're not checking sex offender files. So originally, I remember some of the first discussions around the table, the point was we don't want anybody falling through the cracks. And the people who fall through the cracks, in other words, There's a men's shelter, there's a women's shelter, there's Salvation Army, there's a lot of other people trying to help this population. The ones who fall through the cracks are the ones, well, they couldn't get in time because they closed the doors at this time, and they're on foot, or they have a bad leg, and they have no help, and they just couldn't get there. And time after time again, they missed out on it. Or the ones who were so inebriated, Salvation Army does a breathalyzer, and some of the men's shelters do breathalyzers. So you get to the door and you blow this number, and you can't get in. So we let that go. We're not doing background checks on them. We don't run them through the system to see if they've got stuff on them. So the end result is the people that you have in your population are the ones who would have fallen through the cracks. And that was our early determination. I'm not sure that's our hope here. Kathy, is that kind of what we're thinking here? So that changes the population that you're ministering to. And there still has to be some barriers and some rules. And you'll have to decide that up front. And that's part of the challenge of you guys, if you're going to be the manager, night managers, overnight managers, is follow the rules, to enforce the rules. And we're going to get to that in the slide here too. So I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there. And what else? Any other questions? Did that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay.
When did you say the next training was? Like you were too far back.
Tuesday, February 6th, and it'll be at New Hope at 7 o'clock.
Tuesday, February 6th, 7 p.m. at New Hope. Anything else? Let's click. Okay. Oh no, stay here. So some of the misconceptions that guide our thoughts before we get started are these. That all homeless people are homeless basically for the same reasons. And it takes, it takes some time. You'll learn this the longer you're in this. But getting to know their stories, getting to know them, being real people, because they are real people, you'll realize that they all have a story. And for most of them, it's just one choice or two choices away from your story. They turned left when you turned right. Had you turned left, you would have been where they are. They said yes to something you said no to, and they ended up here. And that slippery slope from healthy and prosperous to homelessness and addiction is slippery. And sometimes, and it's all different stories. I can give you some general 4 or 5 patterns that we fall into, but they're being changed now too. The majority of folks in the Winchester shelter now are younger. When we started out, it was I would say my age or older, and now most of them are younger than me. For the first 3 years, we were very rare to see a woman, and 30% of their population this season has been women. So that's changed over the last 4 or 5 years too, where they have 12 to 15 women every night in their population, which is very different. And that's not all the women out there. Those are the ones who, you can imagine, it takes a certain strength and humility to, as I think, more as a woman than a man, to come to one of these places and subject themselves to that population and live among them. So there's that population has changed. They're getting younger. There's more women. There's some couples that are coming that are, at least they say they're husband and wife. We don't check that, but they say they're husband and wife. So things are changing. Reasons for the position they're in have changed. Some of the traditional ones are still true. Addictions and things like that plague that. Some of it comes on after homelessness. It's a result of homelessness rather than a condition of it or preempts it. But that's part of it. So basically, the reason I wanted to address misconceptions is, just like our expectations, if we can set these aside, your preconceived ideas of, well, they must be an alcoholic, so I know how to handle alcoholics. I have one in my family, so I know what to say to them. Don't go in with assumptions like that. Don't go in with expectations that I know how to deal with these people, kind of thing. Because their stories are all different. And some of them just need one break. And some of them will take every break you have for the rest of their life and never act on it. And that's not why we're here, right? We're here to keep them from freezing in a winter and keep them out of the cold and show some love, show the love of God to them in their lives while we can. Misconception 2, those who are homeless choose to be homeless. It's their choice to be on the street. It's true for some. It is not the story. It is not the story. Many of them would love to get back home, to get back into a place, to have a place of their own. Many of them, that's all they want. They see themselves as one break. Yes, sir.
I disagree with that.
Disagree with that some of them don't want to be there?
You want to be homeless. I'm homeless now and I don't want to be.
Right, that's what I mean. That's the misconception.
That's what you said, yeah, misconception.
There's a misconception that you hear from other people who say, and out on the street, well, they could give a place if they wanted to. They'd rather be homeless than not. And I'm saying that's a misconception. That's a false.
I understand. It's not, I stand up, to argue because I'm not like that. But I'm homeless now.
Okay.
I left Pennsylvania, which I was assistant manager at a shelter home there. And I came here because of work, because I couldn't get a job there. And
Okay.
every time I get a job here, the company just give you the shaft, and either they don't do their job for you to work and be safe,
Yeah.
or they just hamstring you along. Last company I worked for him for a week, last week. This week, he hasn't worked me a day.
Yeah. That's a story nobody realizes. A lot of us don't realize those stories. I think we're on the same page. I'm saying the same thing you're saying. And I'm glad you're here because you can keep correcting me if I'm saying the wrong thing.
No, I understand what you're saying, and yes, everything you've said is true. But nobody wants to be homeless. I don't care what they're homeless for.
Well, I would say
It could be work, and like you said, it could be addictions for alcohol, drugs. To me, yeah, okay, me, yes, I admit, I drink a little bit, but I don't drink to get drunk. That's stupid.
yeah.
But drugs, no. That's one thing I will never agree with, do drugs.
Good. What's your
Drugs are
name?
bad, I don't care how you see it. Everything I take right now is prescribed to me. Blood pressure, stuff like that, that's it. I will never step back in those bad steps that I took back in my younger days to do drugs. That's stupid.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you're here. Keep interjecting ideas, and you can help me stay on the right track. Let me say it in a different way. I've spent a lot of time with guys we've offered opportunities to get out of the tent, to get out of those things and into a place. They've chosen not to. Maybe to say that they wanted to be homeless is the wrong way to say, but they rather keep the lifestyle they have than choose a different way that had parameters and it had different things. So they chose the life they had. And I've known many that choose to continue in the lifestyle that they're in because of giving up their way of life for another. So that's probably not the same as saying they want to be homeless. If they could have a home and live the way they're living, they would choose that, I'm sure, to have a roof over their head. So thank you for keeping me honest up here. But so that's one thing. Most of them, as our brother said, if given opportunities, if given parameters and help and direction, want to get out of that lifestyle. Most of them do, but not all of them. And the path from that to back, which we would call normal living, is different for every individual, and it's not an easy one. It is a huge investment of time and energy and emotions, and that's really not what we're talking about starting this year. We're talking about an overnight barrier to keep them safe in cold weather. Hopefully we build on that. We build on relationships, and we build further on that, and we develop relationships, and we take them farther. But this conversation is about keeping them from freezing or catching some kind of cold or pneumonia out in the weather through the cold months. The next one is arresting and punishing the homeless will effectively cure the problem. Most of you probably don't think that's true, but it is a conversation that happens all over the place. It's got a conversation that happens in your church when everybody comes in and they're comfortable and you say, we're going to turn our church into a homeless shelter. Well, they're better off if you just leave them out there because the police will pick them up and then they get a warm bed, they get 3 meals, they're safe. If you haven't heard that, then good, you're running in good circles. But it is out there, but it's not the truth. Every once in a while, I've run into folks who deliberately do something so that they'll get picked up so they can go back and spend the weekend inside, but it's very rare. That's not the answer. 4 is nothing can be done to help solve the problem of homelessness in America. I should let Bob talk for a minute on that, but we believe there are things you can do. There's steps. That's why we're here, right? There's something we can do. This isn't the answer to solve the problem, but it is a way of helping. It's a beginning, and it's kind if we do it right. It's Christ-like if we do it right. It's helpful. It's not the solution, but in this day and age, with the kind of money and resources that we have in this country, we should be able to make an impact in their lives. And if nothing else, one of the things that the Winchester group did that is probably one of the most powerful things it did is it put that ministry in the spotlight. It made that condition, that reality, mainstream. And now everybody in Winchester, Frederick County knows that there is a need. They had a meeting last night at the Hanley Library. Over 100 people showed up. And most of those people weren't involved already. They just wanted to be involved. They wanted to do something to help. So awareness, if all we do is accomplish awareness, we've done a lot. It's a big step. Anything else before we go to the next slide? Okay, let's see what we've got next. So here's some of the things. When I thought this picture in my mind while I was driving, it really made a lot of sense. Right now, not as much, but so this is our interaction. This is our relationship with the men and women that we're going to minister to. The horizontal line is them. The vertical line is you. Their confliction, where they're coming to us. So the heart and the cross is where they're coming to us. So where they are meeting us at is between trust and fear. And one of the reasons we won't have a huge population right up front, and it takes years to build that, is because of trust. If you live on your own, especially if your immigration status is suspect, or you think it is, or you've done something and you have a prior record, or even if you're not even a criminal, but you've been hauled in and all the police know you, one of those guys, if you've been on the streets for any amount of time, that population, those people know you. The local officers know you, the local businesses know you, maybe others. And when someone comes and says, hey, I want to give you a free place to sleep, that's all kinds of red flags and antennas go up. And I'm like, what do you want from me? What do I have to give up? What do you want me to do? Do I have to sign something? And so that's a huge mountain that we have to overcome, is their sense of trust. They're not going to just walk in and say, oh, you want to do something nice for me? I trust you. Here's my name. They're not going to do that. And for good reasons. And so someplace in between suspecting everybody and really wanting deep down to have someone to trust, someone in their life they can call on and count on, somewhere in between there is where we're going to meet these folks. And we need to, when we meet them, we need to move them towards the trust side to do real ministry. And that takes a lot of work and patience and things to do. So that's our job. Where you and I are in boundaries and grace. We just want to love them. We just want to be nice to them. We want to be kind to them. We want to give them what they need. I have 2 coats, I want to give them a coat. I have 2 meals, I want to give them a meal. What can I do to help? That's why I'm here. What can I do? And that enabling, that generosity doesn't build trust. And it doesn't help the situation. There has to be boundaries in the relationship. There has to be parameters and rules for, because you are going to live together in one space for a certain amount of time. And if you want them to come back and over, and you want them to live together in that space, and to trust each other, and to feel safe, which is the big thing. Brother, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know what kind of places you've been in, but feeling safe was one of the number one concerns that we received and when we talked to the folks. Because you're not always safe out there. It's hard to close your eyes in a place where you don't know who can come up and who can do what and take your stuff. And so boundaries and rules, parameters, provide safety or a sense of safety and trust. And that will be the challenge for you and I as folks who are working there, is to how do we navigate enforcing the rule. If the rule is set for their safety and their health and all these good reasons, how do we balance that by enforcing the rule but making them feel loved and wanted and accepted and not judged at the same time? And that experience is irreplaceable there, but there are things to do and ways to approach that we'll talk about over the next few weeks. But so does that make sense to you guys, what I'm talking about? So in the middle is where we meet. We're wrestling with, I want to give them an extra 5 minutes, or I want to let them go out to their car and come back, because, why not? But then on the other hand, the rule says this, and if I let him go, then I have to let her go. So we're right there the whole time, because they've got stories, and then they're like, I want to trust you. I'm like, sure, I can't yet, so I'm going to be guarded. I'm not going to tell you the truth to every question you ask. I'm going to wait and see. And so for maybe for this whole first season, that's where we're all going to live, right there in the tension between trust and fear and boundaries and grace. Okay, it makes more sense now that I explained it. So that's good. Any questions? Comments? Corrections?
I have a comment, just an observation. I think having an open house to whoever needs a place to stay without any kind of screening will be comforting to some and very uncomfortable to others. There will be some there that will be afraid to shut their eyes because there is no screening process.
That's right.
But that's also one of the supervisor's jobs too, to make sure the other people are safe.
Yes. And that's the good point. That really drives home what I'm saying. So if you come in and you're that guy who, I've never been homeless before in my life, but I lost my job and just a series of unfortunate events put me here, and I'm going to get out as soon as I can because I'm a hard worker and I don't drink or use drugs, so it's just a matter of time. I'm going to be off my feet and I'm just coming here to just... And then you got these three guys over here who drink all day right up to the last minute and then stumble through the door, and you saw them all day because you're in the same places, and you know that they're going to take your stuff if you close your eye. And then the guy says, okay, here's your cot, and here's your cot, and you're side by side. And then, so those are the things that happen. Mm-hmm. Or you're a female and you're on the streets, and you're just trying to keep yourself safe and away from everybody all day long until the door's open, then you get in and you're safe. And there's those guys that have been running down alleys after you all day, or calling you names, or hollering at you, or drinking, and then here you are, just on the other side of this curtain from those guys, and the lights are going to go out. So how do we convince her that she's safe? How do we keep them on the... So there's challenges. You can start to, if your mind starts to spin a little bit, you can see how that gets kind of crazy. Anything else? Good question.
But that's why there's volunteers there. The manager is there to run the show, but the volunteers are there to keep eye on people so they're safe, correct?
Correct.
Right. So how we structure the volunteers is very important. And there's a fine line. And nobody can sleep when someone's standing right here over top of you. And, no, it's fine. You go ahead to sleep. But at the same time, it's hard to get enough folks, volunteers, when we start doing this for 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 8 weeks, to spend the night and stay awake all night and stay in there and just sit in the chair and kind of just be on hand. And then one of the things we'll talk about in the training is how do we'll go on for that. You're right. That's the job of the volunteers. Not just to keep them safe, but to make them feel comfortable and welcome. And they have to have their space. That's one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit. They need their own space. They need to know it's their space, and nobody else is allowed to get in there to take their stuff or get in their thing, or can I borrow your pillow? Once they establish their territory, that's theirs, and we have to honor that and respect that and make sure everybody else does. So creating an environment where they feel like it might only be 6 by 8, but that's their space for the night. Don't come over here and sit on my cot. Don't come. So it's yeah.
Didn't I read somewhere that there's a police officer it's there?
No.
No? Does Watts, they don't do that either? No? Okay. I thought I read that or seen that.
No, that's a challenge. There's you guys are setting this up brand new, so we can establish whatever rules and parameters we want. One of the things we had to do in a couple of years in Watts was to get the cooperation between the police and us that says we're not going to let you in the shelter because you got a tip that someone you have a warrant for is sleeping here tonight. Because if that population knows that we're going to allow that, they will never show up. And neither will their friends. And then we also got them to agree that they would not park in the parking lot and be there at 7 when our doors opened up, because then the guys open up and then there they are. Okay, Bill, we've been waiting for you. Get right in here. So it's not like a sanctuary city or anything like that, but there was a level of trust between us and agreement between us and the local officers that they wouldn't target us. Now, we also had an agreement if they got a tip and this person was murder or violent crime or had something that was endangering us or themselves or the population, then we would have to comply. We weren't stupid about it. We tried to follow that. But if it was just worn out because he was a failure to show up at his last, paternity hearing or something. But, so no, we did, to answer your question, we don't have that. We did have a few folks in our congregations who volunteered who were police officers, but they are off duty and they were there as congregants, not as officers. Anything else? All right, what we got next? Traps. Here's how some of us walk ourselves into situations that create more harm than good. And this specifically for those that are volunteers who aren't the paid night managers who are there to stay awake and follow the rules and enforce the rules. This is mostly the volunteers because we're the ones that get sucked into the stories. Protect your personal information as much as you protect your purse. So if you're going to volunteer for the night, you know where you're there, you're not going to just bring your purse in and set it on the table in front of everybody. Because your mind is thinking, I love them, I want to be here, but I'm not sure I can trust them with setting my purse out there. So you're going to lock your purse up. Consider your personal information like that. Protect your personal information like you do your stuff. As a rule, don't give your last name out. Don't give your address out. Don't say, let me text you, because now they have your cell phone. And there's always those folks who are completely innocent and would never do anything. But there's always those guys who will take advantage of that. They get a cell phone, you will be getting calls and texts all the time. If they get your last name or your address, you're just opening yourself up. And it may be that Billy he would never do that. But Billy's running with Johnny all day. And about the third beer, Johnny says, hey, did you get the telephone number of that girl that was working last night? Yeah, it's right here. The next thing you know, it's out. So it's the same thing if you're going in a foreign country, right? Or you're going on a mission trip to Mexico or someplace. You don't give your last name out. You don't give your address out. You don't talk about your kids and where they go to school. Just guard that information. Be friendly and open and loving and Christ-like. Just protect your personal information as if it was your purse or your wallet. For your own safety, but for theirs too. It eliminates temptation completely off the table. Any questions about that? Do you understand that? Do you think it's mean or rude? And then the reason it's a trap is because it's really easy. It's like, what's your name? Come up here and play with me. So, dinner's just over and everybody's on a 10-minute break before we go back into the stuff, and we're kind of there's people watching around. Carol, listen, that guy over there, don't look. He's been bothering me all day. He steals. I know he's got a gun, and he's threatened me. And and when he took my wallet this after I got it back, but he took all my money out. If I could just get $5, maybe get my medicine today. And don't let him know, because if he knows I got $5, I'll take it. So just let me know what you think. Go ahead. And they'll play every story. They'll do stuff like that. Or can I have one extra piece of cheese tonight? Or whatever it is. And
Well.
how could you might give him cheese. You don't give him $5. So
Right.
they'll take you aside, and they got a story for everything. And some of the stories are real, because that dude over there did pull a knife on him. And they have been fighting all day, and now they're in the same place. And I can't sleep on that side. I need to cot on this side. Or can I go out for 5 more minutes because I just need to have a cigarette. I just need 5 more minutes. So we're caught in these stories. This is my last day here. And I need to see my kids. And they're coming up next week. And I'm not going to come back here I'm not coming back tomorrow night because I got a job. I'm just not getting paid for 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
So, can I have your phone number so I can call you when this is over? I'm just going to call you and they're sincere. Thank you. You're on TV now. So. But there are those that are there for the right reasons and they're innocent and you just want to help them. And then there's those who know every angle, every story, and they know how to play. And they'll pick you out, and you're soft-hearted and you're full of love, and all they really want is a chance to send you a thank you note because they're leaving tomorrow and they got a job in Florida, and as soon as they get there and they get established, I just want to send you back some money for all the help you've given if you just give me your address. That kind of stuff, yeah.
What if it's somebody you know? Because she's been teaching in was taught in Warren County for over 30 years, and she's, a lot of people, they get their names in the paper and other things too. So, what if it's somebody you know?
So how that affects you, it'll make you a little uncomfortable because you know them, and them a little bit uncomfortable at first, probably. Does that change the trust that you have in there? I mean, that's going to be your call, right? That's why we have rules that say, don't give them personal information, don't give them last names, don't give them your cell phone, don't tell them your address. If they're 25 and have a smartphone, they'll probably find it out. They can do that. Don't make it easy on them. That just gives you another level of, you can say, Billy, I had you in class. What are you doing? How'd you get here? And get some more information. Maybe you can find out some way to help them. But the parameters still apply, right? The parameters still apply. Anything about protecting your stuff? Ooh, and you got 8 minutes. Listen to their story before you make judgments or promises. They might not tell you your story. They might not tell you anything about them. They're private. They don't want you to know anything. But don't fill in the gaps. Don't look at the tattoo on the arm and say, "Oh, I sized this guy up. I know where he's been." Or look at who she's with and say, "I know what kind of girl she is." Don't jump to conclusions. Don't make assumptions. Don't follow your intuition or your judgment into a place that is going to change how you feel or what you think. So don't. And we do that. You do this on the street. I mean, you do this about everybody. I do this about everybody too. That's who we are. So it takes a lot of willpower to not go there and just come in with a heart ready to serve and love and not jump to conclusions, because chances are you're going to get it wrong. The story isn't the way you thought it was. Their condition isn't what you thought. And so that's one of the things you gotta just condition your mind, your way of thinking right up front. Getting their story is powerful, though. Knowing their story. You can share a little bit of your story. Don't share the power information. Don't share that stuff. But you can share a little bit of your story. You're going to connect to them. You'll find that, wow, she's my age. We grew up in the same town. We went to the same school. We had the same teachers. Whatever. And the connections are going to be unreal after a while. And you're going to see the reality and the fragility, how fragile staying the path of God. What's the old saying? There, but by the grace of God go I. You'll see how close our stories are to different points. So finding their story, hearing their story is powerful. It makes a connection that you can't replace. And it also helps inform us on how we might help this population make that next step. But don't force it, don't pry, let it come from them, not from you. And don't make any judgments until you heard it. I should also add right there, and don't believe everything you hear. Some of the stories, especially if you ask for it, are going to be so fantastic. There's no way that could have happened to one person. And sad, and they know what strings to pull. But, I'm hesitating. I'm talking like I'm painting this picture of this group of con artists and manipulators. And I don't want you to get that idea, because now I'm going to give you a preconceived idea. But any one of us who has to survive on the streets for very long, you learn how to survive. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean you can't be who you were, or it just means we're survivors. And we learn what it takes to survive. And if we have to tell a white lie to survive, then we do it. And pretty soon it becomes second place. And that's just part of what we're dealing with. All right, next one, 3. Be consistent. This is huge. That's why I made it in all capitals. Be consistent. When you're a volunteer or a night manager or in charge in any way, got to know the rules, follow the rules, no exceptions. Consistency speaks louder than anything to provide safety and trust. When they start to think that there's a weak link in the chain, or there's a soft heart I can go after, or you let her go for 10 minutes, you only let me have 5 minutes, or they got double chicken, I only got 1, or they got to go to a smoke break even though we only have 2 of them, she got 3. As soon as they see that, they will pick up on that, and they don't keep things to themselves, the population will know, and then the rules go out the window. So consistent, you have to be consistent. So that's why it's so important up front to make sure the rules make sense. Early on in Watts, we had a lot of churches who had a no smoking rule. No, we don't allow smoking in our building. Well, most people don't. Well, we don't allow smoking on our premises. We don't allow smoking anywhere on our property. So they wanted to say, well, they're here for this week, you can't have any smoking. And that's fine. If you're not a smoker, that sounds like an easy rule. But if you're a smoker and you're on the streets or you're homeless, and really all you have is to console you and to find some peace and get a moment of relaxation is to have a cigarette, and you take that away, now there's nothing left, then you're raising the anxiety level and the struggle for those 8 hours way up over the top. You're just asking for trouble. So we had to enforce that we will allow smoking. But we've got it down to set times, certain breaks, certain areas. So here's a smoke break. You don't smoke, you can stay in your cot. At first it was like, okay, everybody out. You smoke or not, everybody's going out for a break. Because we didn't have the manpower to stay inside with the group that didn't want to. And then we found out the hard way that when we said, oh, there's only 4 of them, we can trust them, we'll go out here. And then we come back in and the guys are like, hey, my back's missing. Someone's been in my thing, and so we had to, one way or the other, come up with a rule and follow it. And we eventually got enough folks that we had monitors on the inside, monitors on the outside, but we didn't get away from that. So if you're a chain smoker and you smoke 3 or 4 packs a day, it's hard for those guys. You just you're aware of it. And you have to let them deal with it. Tell them right up front, there's only 2 smoke breaks, or there's only 3. But the rules, you have to be consistent. So we'll work real hard up front to make sure the rules make sense and we can abide by them. And therefore they're good. And then everybody, across the line, no exceptions, has to enforce the rules. Consistency is the key to trust, I believe. You have to be consistent. And the challenge for the first few years was they'd come to my church and we'd do all these things and we'd have all this stuff and it'd be a great week and everybody's excited, can't wait, all right, Pastor Mark, see you. And they go to the next church, and the next church, it's a whole new set of people and a whole new set of volunteers. And they would say, they only let you smoke 2 times? Oh, you can smoke anytime you want here. And then they come, and then it was just, and they get to the next week. Well, at the last church, they let us do this. Why don't you let us do this? Well, I can't believe it. So we'd have an uprising every 7 days because, so we, by the 3rd year, we had to get the churches and the managers and everybody together and say, if you want to be a host church, you got to follow the rules. Every church, same rules, same policies, same procedures. Which is one of the things that the night managers helped because we had paid staff. And they traveled from church to church. So they brought the same rules and enforcement to each church. Consistency solved 90% of all our conflicts and issues. Questions about that? Is this helping, Kathy? Okay. No secrets. This is where we get in trouble. These are the traps we get into. Getting called aside or finding a favorite out of the population. And you know, she's only 24. Bless her heart. She had a hard life, and father left her, her mother's is dead, and man, I just really like her. She's so sweet, and she starts getting preferential treatment, or you tell her little things you don't tell anybody else, or you tell him things you don't tell anybody else, or they'll come to you and say, I want to tell you secrets. I want to tell you something that I can't tell anybody else, but I know I can trust you, and they'll tell you these things. There might be some situations where that's the truth and it's real. For the most part, you're asking for trouble. So part of that is to just say no to that. I don't want to know. I don't want to know that right now. And there's opportunities to do that. You want to talk to the pastor. You want to talk to a counselor. We have a counselor who works in this church. You bring somebody in who's outside of the situation, who can hear what they're having to say. There might be some situations that social services or the police force or a pastor of care or somebody really needs to know about. They could help. But that is not the role of the overnight managers or the volunteers, is you will get drawn into every life and death drama, and it will be exhausting and eventually be detrimental. So don't tell them secrets, and don't receive any secrets. Yes?
Doesn't that kind of, like with hearing their story, you're talking more about, I have a child hidden in the woods, or something that's going on right now as opposed to their story?
I think I might not have communicated it, but that's 2 different things. So the stories are like, where'd you grow up? Well, here I went to school. Were you married before? Those are the things that they're going to share with you. But
Hurt somebody or kill somebody, and that's a secret.
yeah.
And the thing is that they came to you specifically and said, hey, can I tell you something that I can't tell anybody else? Right. Not just sharing where they came from or how they got where they are, where they want to be.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of tattletaling. I need to tell you that Bill, the guy in the 3rd car down there, he's got a knife in his shoe. Or something like that. And I'm going to tell you a secret. And most of the time, they're not, because you checked them when they came in. And if you go say, hey, Bill, can you take off your shoe? Who told you that? And then you get into this thing, or other things, I think it'll be apparent. But yes?
The CD brings up a point. In the management, is there an aspect of being a mandated reporter?
Is there what?
Mandated reporter means by law you have to report if there is a child or they have said that they have committed a murder. So is there that part of the management?
No, it's not. The state doesn't recognize volunteers in this situation as mandatory reporters.
Right, but do the volunteers have to report it on to mandated reporters?
If there's some guidelines. If it's going to something that would harm themselves or harm somebody else, then that goes to the night manager. And my rule of thumb used to be, go tell that to the night manager directly. Don't triangulate things and bring things into it. Because then you get caught in the middle and say, well, I told her not to tell anybody, or I told her this, or I told her that in secret. And then you're obligated. Do you violate a trust because they trusted you with this secret? But now you have to tell the manager, and you've already violated. So just my rule has always been, don't receive it. Don't say, you know, I know you mean well, but if it's really that serious, go tell the night manager. And they have rules and guidelines to follow about information they receive. Is that clarified a little bit, or not help?
Yes, absolutely, which means that somebody is a mandated reporter.
Yeah. Now in my case, or if you're a public school teacher and you're volunteering that night, I don't know how that translates over. There are some situations but we're not dealing with a child with a population under 18, so that changes things a little bit. If you receive information about a kid about some abuse or something, then there's laws that guard that. But this population is all going to be adults. Anything else in that one? I don't know what I have left. What else? Do I have anything else? Don't be Santa Claus. Don't. This is an urge to resist. In our churches and our folks, people come up and they give me money all the time. Say, here, they're moved, and I've said something that they heard and they're inspired. Which happens about once or twice a year. It's really good. And they'll come up and give me $20 and say, when you run into somebody, you just give it to the person you need. So there's a Santa Claus complex that we think we're just, and they'll tell you, if they target you, and they'll try everything up front. They'll try to find the ones who are Santa Claus in the group who have means, and I always have $5. How can that hurt anything? Or I have a generator, or I have a tent, and there are ways to help. It needs to be structured. Our policies will have, like, if we're going to give tents out, or we're going to give sleeping bags out, or we're going to give gloves out, or socks out, or we're going to benefit or defend beneficiaries, then we do it as a policy, not individual, because they'll just keep going, well, I lost my last pair, or I lost that thing, or I gave it to him, can I have another one? So don't end up resist the urge to be Santa Claus. There are ways that we're going to help. That's why we're here. We're going to raise money, we're going to do stuff, and meet their needs. But don't be Santa Claus. And the next one is probably going to get me in trouble. Don't be Jesus. Yes, we want to be Jesus. What are you talking about, Pastor? We're supposed to be Jesus to them. We're supposed to be hands and feet of Jesus. But you're not their Savior. Resist the idea that you're coming into their life to be their Savior. Jesus is their Savior. You're not Jesus. You're shining a light. You're sharing your love. You can share your faith. I think when this thing gets going, it's for the most part going to be in houses of worship. It's going to be in churches. It's going to be in places where you have the complete freedom to share your faith with them at times. But there will have to be guidelines on that too. But you're not Jesus. Don't come into this and have an altar call every night, or think that you are the way to save them. Because a lot of them are already saved. A lot of them are already believers. They already love Jesus. They just made bad choices. Who knows that getting saved doesn't prevent you from making a bad choice? See, that's the amen side. Someone should have said amen right there. You guys are so hard to deal with tonight.
You should have been there last week.
Is that it, Ronnie? Yep. So that's all I got for you tonight. I can answer questions, or we can talk among ourselves if you like. What do you think?
I guess I'm just trying to visualize what are the chances anything poorly happens?
Poorly?
Yes. Like, is there an incident?
Incidents, altercations happen frequently. Part of the next set of trainings are going to be how to deal with it, how to de-escalate emotions, how to calm down people who are inebriated. That's why it's so important. These night managers have all this training that you go through some of this stuff, because yes, those things happen, especially in low barrier shelters where you're not making sure they're sober before they come through the door. And And he might be the nicest guy in the world. You saw him this afternoon and everything's great. He's going to come. By the time he gets there, he's already finished off that fifth and now he's ready to fight. Or Joe over there kicked him when he was asleep and now he's going to end up getting back. And we hear that all the time. So there needs to be trained people to deal with that. The rest of us just try to learn how to just de-escalate stuff and be friendly and keep the calm down and keep our voices low and distract. So there are methods to that, which we're not going to go into tonight. But yes, incidences happen. Things happen.
Can I add to that just a little bit? That's where being consistent is going to fall into. You have got to, if you say no to one, you say no to all of them. Because the moment you give in, you give someone an extra piece of cheese, 2 hours from now, that will turn into something. You have always got to be consistent and you've got to follow the rules. And I don't want to say it like this, but they're not your friends and they're not your family. You're there to help them in this very specific way. And you can care about them and love them, but there's got to be boundaries for yourself, your personal safety. But you've got to be consistent, always. Some of these things that will de-escalate the situation is how much respect they have for you. Because if they don't respect you and they are mad and they're ready to fight, nothing you say in any kind of way is going to make any difference. But if they have a little bit of respect for you and who you are in your position, that will go a long way. Next week at the training, I'm sure that Brad Pennington's going to talk about officer presence. You have to maintain a presence at all times.
Yeah.
And that's something basically experience is going to teach you. We're
And
all
that-
going to make that first mistake, and then the next week you're going to be like, oh yeah, I won't do that again. So.
And that trust and respect you're talking about doesn't just happen because you tell them to trust you and respect you. It was a thing that by the third year they came to my church and came in, and if I walked in the room, they would police themselves. Hey, be quiet back. Pastor Mark's here. Watch your language. Everybody sit down, you know. Because they, by that time, they believed I was there for them and for their good. And if they started messing up, they were going to lose what we had to offer. But that took a few years till they stopped hitting me up for money every time I saw them. They stopped saying they wanted favors and stuff, and they knew who I was and they respected it. It took a while to get to that point. And the consistency and the love that you show them will get you there. Yeah.
You say it's a low barrier shelter, but does that mean that you guys do searches before they come in to
Yes.
try to at least ensure some more, so there's not harmful weapons or?
We have, now up there we have the rules, and I imagine we will here. Their bags are checked, there's a pat down. They have to be willing to let us see in their stuff, to open their bag. And there's a whole procedure on how to do that. It's kind of like at the airport, we have plastic things, we put them in up there. You put your bag in here, we ask them to open it up, we'll go through it, show me the inside, show me that pocket, show me your pockets here, take everything out. Most of them who don't want to lose the privilege of staying there and don't want to lose the privileges are very forthcoming. You tell them up front, you want to avoid every temptation, so you tell them way up front before they even get on the bus, before they get in, hey, there's no weapons, no knives, there's no guns, there's no weapons, there's no alcohol, there's no drugs, and we're going to check you. And if you get through the door with that, we're either going to throw it away or we're going to turn you away. So they'll get away with it. We had to learn the hard way through this stuff. Like, look, can I just, I left my bag out in the corner. Can I go back out and get it? Or I left it on the bus or something. And that's the time where they've already gone through the checkpoint. They've already gotten everything and they're just going to run out real quick and grab that other thing. And the next thing you know, and it was like the second year, and we started finding liquor bottles in the toilet, in the back of the toilet, in the cold water back there. How in the world they got in there? Because we checked them every night. So somehow or another, they had an excuse. They would hide it under a certain bush or certain rock, and during smoke break, they find it, and they get it back in there, and they'll find a way. So yes, we do checks. It's not sneak checks either. You make sure we're up front. Okay, guys, we're telling you last time, it's your last chance. Get rid of everything before you get here, because if we find it, you're not going to get a bed. So make sure they know that. And there is some policing of each other. Once some of the guys that have been there a while, they know me, they trust, and they'll come up to the thing, and we'll just say, or got the guy 4 guys back, he's got something in the back pocket, just tell me. So we'll say, okay, you got anything to declare? So you just, because that guy the 90% of the folks who are going to sleep there, they want to know for sure nobody else has a gun or a knife. So they help enforce these rules. They watch out for themselves because when they close their eyes, they want to know they're in a safe place. And there's one or two that want to try something. But so to answer your question, whoever asked that, yes, there's checks and you go through all of that and you be very serious about it. And it's for the love. That's not where we take their name and turn them in. But for the safety of the population, these are the rules and there are no exceptions.
That's going to be part of our class on Tuesday, also, how to do that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay, but I was just wondering if they do have something, and they don't want to get rid of it, a bottle or something like that,
Then they have to be turned away.
they have to get rid of it, make it say, you know, you can
Our-
hold on to it until tomorrow.
Our policy for like pocket knives, things that they used because they live on the street to defend themselves and they feel like, I have to have this. You don't know where I live and what I go through. I need this.
Right.
Those kind of things, we put in a bag and we locked away. But liquor bottles, things, and drugs and all that, we don't take any of that. If you come in with that, we're going to throw it away or you're going to be turned away. We don't hold your fist for you until you get out and get it back to you.
But will we give them an opportunity to, you know, because they might want to hold on to it until the very last second. And they
So
get
like-
the opportunity to throw it away on the way in the door, because you know they're going to wait until that very last second, so they won't be turned away and toss it in the trash.
Yeah. So, depending on the situation and where the shelter is that night, it'll be a little bit different each time. So the downtown churches, the people who they just walk up to the shelter, then the rules were church property. You can't have it on church property. You get rid of it before you get here, and they get in line. When they're out of town places, we have a bus that picks them up, or they have a bus. And before you got on the bus, they checked. You can't bring anything on the bus, so it doesn't come with you on the trip. Now, we don't do as extensive a search to get on the bus because we don't have the personnel to do that. So inevitably, there's some that sneak by, but they're told before they get on now, if you have anything left, you're going to lose it before you get there, so don't bring it. And they find ways. They'll find a way to stash it or hide it or put it there until they get back. They know where it is. If they get there at the church and we find it in the bag, it goes in the trash. Usually we say we pour it out. Because putting it in the trash is the same thing to them as saving it. And they're just going to get it out of the trash tomorrow. So we will pour it out. Most of them don't show up. I haven't seen many show up with a full bottle thinking they're going to be able to save it. They're going to pass it around until it's gone, and then they're going to get off the bus.
Well, it sounds like very much like airport security. I mean, you can't bring fluids through the security or knives, and so it's.
We're not quite that good, but yes, but the idea is there, right? The idea is there, but a lot of those folks, I think these are years to build up. We're going to start out with a very small population. But in the bigger cities and the big population, a lot of the folks are on medication of some sort or another. So we can't just get rid of all drugs. They'll have a prescription with them, they'll have a bottle with them, and they're on they're on blood medicine or diabetes or something that we can't take. So the night manager, there's a log, we have a night manager log, and he'll take it in and their name's on them, but he keeps it, he holds it. For safety, for their safety and for everybody else's. There's a lot of things that go wrong with this. It's not an easy thing. Oh yeah, I just want to bring them in and let them stay here overnight because it's freezing. And we do, and I do too. But there's just a lot of things that we will learn on the way, and we'll learn the hard way as we go.
Well, like medication that you have to take, like blood pressure and all that, would you like have a space that you'd lock it up in?
Yeah, it's locked up.
Well, when I was assistant manager up in Pennsylvania, that's what we did. You're not allowed to keep any medication, prescription or none.
Yeah.
But if a prescription, give it to the manager, they log it in, they put it in the box, and it gets locked.
Right. Yep, that's the way to go. And I didn't invent this idea. We borrowed it probably from there and other places that I've learned the hard way too. What's the name of the facility up in Pennsylvania, do you remember?
Good Samaritans,
What town is that?
Clearfield, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Catholic church owns it.
Okay,
And there, what they do, they have a big warehouse. They get donated furniture and stuff, they clean it, repair it. They have a store right there in town and they resell it. And that's what keeps the shelter going.
yeah. That's great, there's some great models out there that we could get into. Yes, ma'am?
This may be semantics, but I used to be house manager at a House of Hope here, and we ensured to say that we kept the medication in the office under lock and key as well.
Right.
But we made sure to say that we were not dispensing medicine, because we are not medical.
Not qualified for that,
But
right?
we just have it under lock and key. When they came in for the medication, we would give them their bag, and they would take it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's, yeah.
Because they will jump on that and
Yeah.
say, oh, you're dispensing
Yeah.
medication, you're dispensing.
Right.
No, we're not dispensing your medication, we're not nurses, we're not doctors.
Right, thank you for that. But she said it's been a remarkably safe year, only half a dozen. Usually there's one a week, they've only had 3 or 4 so far this year, incidents where they've had to have someone removed or something, which happens. Fighting, touching physical violence is a no mercy rule. One time and you're gone. If you get up and punch somebody or start a fight, then you're gone. It used to be we were one night, and if you did it the second time, it was a week. You did it a third time, it was for the season. But guys would use that. I can do one night. I can sleep outside for one night because that guy ticked me off so bad. It's punching him's worth spending the night, and they would do it anyway. So we had to say it's a one and done for physical violence. But I'm saying more than I wanted to say. So okay, let's cut the feed. Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate your hearts and your service and desire.